Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Good evening. Welcome to the 7th episode of Startup Grind Bratislava. Before we kick off with our fireside chat, I would like to thank to our sponsors, KPMG, and also to our media sponsors and partners. And on top of that, the Spot, who was so kind to provide this space for us tonight. Also, just a quick notification, we're going to be online tonight on Slido, so you guys feel free to join slido.com and put the hashtag SUGBA. Alright, so now let's jump straight to the interview. So please give a warm applause for our speaker, who holds a very interesting position. He's a CEO of Exponea and also Managing Director of LRJ Capital, Irikovsky. Right, Peter, thanks for coming. Let's kick off with first quick questions about yourself. So if you can tell us where did you grow up and what did your parents do?
Hi, thanks for the warm welcome. So I was born in Michalovce, which is east part of the country, but I only lived there for like a few months, and then I grew up in Považská Bystrica, which is a city where there was one big factory, and both my parents worked there. They were both engineers, but very different. My father is like very technical, my mother is more theoretical, and they both worked there.
I learned that you graduated from Charles University in Prague, majoring in computer science. So why did you decide to move to Czech Republic in the first place?
So I studied like a grammar school, so I knew that I needed to study something more, otherwise I would be useless in life. So at least that was what my parents told me. And I decided to go for IT, because I was better than my teacher at high school, so I thought I was good. And when I applied, I tried all of the IT schools in Czech and Slovakia, and I considered Charles University, the Faculty of Maths and Physics, the toughest. So I thought that I'll try the toughest, and if I get fired, kicked off, then I'll try something easier. But it ended up working out.
So, given your technical background that you gained through studying in the university, my question is, why did you decide to start working in finance and business consulting instead of joining some big IT company?
So I thought I was good at IT, but when I came to the school in Prague, I found out that I was like probably in the bottom 20% of the people there, and so I had to really work hard to catch up on those other guys, and I managed to catch up to be above average, or maybe even like whatever, top 25%, because they fired the other 75%, so I still stayed there. But out of those that stayed, I was still quite far behind the best guys that were there. So I thought to myself, I can either try really hard and try to be as good as they were, or I can try to find something new. And what I found out was also that I'm more of an extroverted person, so sitting behind the computer the whole day wasn't the most energy gaining thing. So that's why I ended up deciding to try various other things. So I took some classes on top of IT at the Faculty of Social Sciences, and I studied some economic classes. And then I ended up going to one of these job fairs, and I applied to every single company that was there. So I spent like 3 days. I wrote individual cover letters to every single one of them, and I got invited to something like 20 assessment centers. So I wrote maybe 30, 40 cover letters, and most of the guys ended up inviting me, and KPMG was the one that ended up taking me in, which was, at the time when I went in, I didn't really know what corporate finance means. I just knew that I really wanted to learn, and I promised them that whatever books they give me, I I will learn them throughout the summer, and when I come in, I'll already know what they want me to know.
Okay, and if you can also talk a bit about your career at McKinsey that followed after KPMG. So what was the position you were working from, and what were your tasks and your accomplishments there?
So my career path at Charles University, KPMG, and McKinsey were all very similar. I came in thinking that I would know something, and I came in and I found out that I didn't know almost anything. And I ended up working hard to be able to sustain that kind of career. And McKinsey was the first career where I not just sustained it, but I actually managed to really find it enjoyable and become also like not just a performer, but also like a top performer. So that was a big encouragement for me, and that was the first time I started thinking that I should try something more and not just like continue with the career. And I was very lucky because I worked in various fields, various countries, and it gave me like a very good oversight, and also with various cultures. So my first projects were in telco industry in the Czech Republic, but then I went to Switzerland when I worked with a German team in the beer industry. So that was really good. Then I also worked in the beer industry in Poland. And then my best project by far was in Dubai, where I worked for like one of the largest corporates in there. And our task was, it was just in the middle of the crisis, and our task was to create like a portfolio strategy for them. They had something like 200 businesses under the conglomerate, and they were firefighting because they had like huge debt payments. And our goal was to make sure that they do not sell those businesses that are core, but create some limits and tell them like what are the parts of the businesses that they should definitely keep, because those are the strategic building blocks for the future. And that was for me the best engagement I could dream of, because I was one of my tasks in the first few weeks was I was interviewing CEOs to find out how good they are at doing their job. And you know, I was 25 or whatever. But it was really great because in the evening I had calls with experts from those fields. So I would have a call with someone who usually was a CEO in that field or really understands that field deeply. So I was just making notes, what are the important factors in that field? And then the next day I was just asking the questions about it and you know, noting down what the guy is telling me. And then again, I would be on the call with the expert and comparing the notes and you know, assessing it. So that was really great because I was doing everything from like hospitals, taxis, building elevators, like fashion, whatever. Like they had really many fields, and so this was like really great because it gave me like an overview of multiple businesses. Mm-hmm. And then two other engagements that were really great was both of them I did with Rastio Kulich, and those were due diligences. So when in 3 weeks you have to really understand a market and be able to tell the client things that nobody else in the market can tell them. And that's really challenging. And the challenge is really tough. And you end up working, usually these are between 80 and 120 hours a week. And so it's really like draining, but it's also really rewarding because you get really sharp private equity guys on the other side asking you questions, and you need to give them answers not based on feelings or whatever. You need to have hard data, and you need to have experts proving them. So in due diligence, it's about trying to get as much data as quickly as you can, and then getting to experts that can give you inside information, and then you also in the 3 weeks, you usually end up doing interview with, let's say, 200, 300 customers. You know, so you have to manage a team that does that, and then you need to evaluate it and put it together and create some kind of recommendation on how a company would grow. And so that's like really great. It's like very challenging. Most people don't want to do that because after that you're like completely energy drained, but you still go to another project, so there's like no rest time. But in terms of the challenge and in terms of how much you learn, it was really great.
Now moving on to the big breakthrough in your career. So regional director at Groupon UK and Ireland. Tell us what was the journey that led to this position?
So I have a great friend who gave me great advice. And so I was discussing what I should do next, and he said that when choosing a company, you need to look at two things. One is how fast they are growing, and the second one is how profitable they are. If they are fast growing, they have too many things going on. So if you're good, they will add up to you, right? And the second thing is if they have high margins, they have a lot of money to pay, right? And because it was 2010 or 11 when I was discussing this, it was still in the like crisis era or whatever you would call it, and there were not too many companies that were growing fast. So, and very few companies that were growing fast and had high margins. So I actually did the research, and Groupon came up clearly number one in terms of like how fast they were growing and how good they are. And I used my due diligence skills and basically just looked through how I could get the closest to the owners or like the top management. And I ended up finding like 5 people that knew someone in the top management of Groupon. And so I asked each of them to give a recommendation on me, and 4 of them did. And then they actually, after the 3rd recommendation, the owner called me and asked me to join them. So, and with that, it was very easy because then I ended up coming to UK. I got a city which was Cardiff in Wales, which was like really screwed. But and they said like, you cannot screw it up more. So try whatever you want. And the results are really fast because you have results every day. And so the first week we were something like 50% up, and the next week we were more than 120% up from the week when I got it, and that was like the average week. So, and they were like, okay. And so the advice from my friend paid off because they said, oh, if you can do this, then here are 2 more cities. And so after doing it for 2 weeks, I already had 3 cities. And then they said, okay, you still, those were also good. First 2 weeks, they gave me more, and then they gave me Groupon Denmark to help establish and stuff. So it really, so I wasn't saying no to anything that they were giving me. And so they kept piling it up, and it was really fun.
So how did you manage to steer your team during the time when Groupon was, I think, one of the fastest growing companies in the world? And also, what do you think were the main reasons why the company was so successful?
So the company, I wouldn't call the company very successful. So it was, they managed to create a really great hype around it. But when you look at it, the valuation during the IPO was over 20 billion, and now, when the last time that I checked it, it was 1.2 billion. So I wouldn't call that very successful. But there were a lot of things that I managed to learn. But to answer so I had no management experience when I came in. So I looked at it very simplified, and I did 2 things that I think were the main levers of what ended up working. So the first thing was that I took as much data as I could and digged through it. So to learn from it, to understand insights. So I understood which kind of deals were purchased by what kind of category of buyers, which category of buyers didn't end up buying the second time, and all these kinds of like things, so that I was able to give my team insights on which deals we should actually run at the platform, and which are deals we should rerun, what is the capacity, so when can you actually sell the same partner the next time, and things like that. So that was one part which helped quite a lot. And the second part was I actually went out and I spent, so my usually week was that I would be, on Monday I would be in London with within the headquarters, and then Tuesday till Friday I would be out in the field with the sales reps, and I just try to understand how they think and what are the issues and what do they need. And so the first thing was about really like fixing some of their problems that they were complaining about, like minor things. They didn't understand why some bonuses were not paid out, or they didn't have some materials, or like small things, but they actually liked it because they just saw that someone cared for them. And then we ended up always doing some kind of competitions, like very easy things. So we said that we would go out water rafting if we hit something.
Yeah.
We would go like wakeboarding and things like that. So in the end, it worked really well, and we ended up going to a lot of events like that. So it was a lot of fun.
Right.
And those events were really good because again, we got closer with those guys. So I again understood them more, and with many of them, I'm still in contact now. So it was like we created like quite a strong bond, and so these two things I believe were the strongest in terms of managing them.
Right. Can you talk a bit more about the culture at Groupon? I mean, we all know that it's quite dynamic environment to work in, and also there is quite a big fluctuation of employees. So some insider notions and some ideas how it worked.
So Groupon was really great to learn some new skills, but it was also a place where you wouldn't want to stay too long, because when you were inside, you knew that they didn't care about anything else than the numbers that were crucial for IPO. And I was lucky because I was in UK, where my boss was a guy who had, I would say, reasonable values, but there were other countries that, when you are supposed to hit some number, the easiest thing you can do is you can dress up a deal that is completely shitty, but you can sell it online so that it looks really good. People will buy it, they will never buy anything else from you again. But when someone is screaming at you over the phone, why are you not hitting your numbers? A lot of countries ended up doing that. So for me, what was really great was that I learned how to manage teams, and I saw how it was done by two people. They were managing 40 countries around the globe, and it was and they managed to build more than 30 of those countries into number one in that country, and it was managed by two people, the Summer brothers, Oli and Mark. And that was really impressive to watch and to see how they did it and how they were able to spread the best practices among the regions and all these things. This was really I haven't seen anyone, not even within the McKinsey years, I haven't even heard about anyone being able to execute that well and that fast, right? But the flip side is that the company was managed through pressure, and there was sometimes too much of the pressure, and because of the pressure, people are doing things that they shouldn't, right? And so some of the countries, when I was discussing with, I wouldn't name, but there were a lot of countries were coming to UK that when they were underperforming, they were told to be with us, and so they would shadow us for 2-3 days. And so when I was discussing with them what are the things that they were doing, I was you don't want to be in such a company, right? So they knew they were screwing employees, they knew they were screwing customers, they knew they were screwing founders, the partners, but they said, what can I do, right?
Yeah.
What is it that I should do better and things like that. So that's why I didn't stay there too long, and I ended up going to Slevomat, where I used again the same way to get in.
Yeah. So yeah, you already digged into that. My next question was that so after Groupon, you moved back to Czech Republic, started as a sales director, and then eventually you took the role of CEO. So if you can compare the differences between managing the team in UK and Czech Republic, and also What was the biggest difference between the cultures in the companies? Like, was it substantial or somehow just small?
So Slevomat was completely different company from Groupon. So when I came into Slevomat was really great at marketing. They had really great marketing and they were really advanced in product as well. But in terms of operations, it was really like, it was unmanaged, I would say. And so that's why when I came in, the skills that I brought into the company were missing, but they had skills that Groupon didn't have, right? And so that's why the combination worked out really so well. But in terms of culture, it was like a big shock for me because in Wales and in the UK, in general, the main motivation was about like creating some kind of challenge and some kind of hype and let's do it and let's go and let's try this. And in Czech, when I tried that, people are looking at me like. And they would just like leave the room, right? and I actually then ended up I got a deck from a friend of mine who worked at McKinsey about managing sales force in the Czech Republic, and that was like a breakthrough for me because like in the first month I was really struggling to get anything really going, and what it said was that actually in Czech Republic you have to manage people completely differently from many other countries. And so in the general model for other countries is create a hype, create a challenge, take someone who is excited, make him the hero, and help him to really succeed, and then the rest will follow. Whereas in Czech Republic, you have to do completely opposite. So when you come up with something that you want them to do, you need to look at the room and see who is the most pessimistic and the loudest and the pessimist. And then you need to take this guy and somehow convert him into like a follower of your idea. And only then the others would follow, right? And as you can imagine, that takes like 5-10 times as much energy than it does to create someone as a hero. Working with positive people is always easier. And a lot of times, I would spend a lot of the time with this guy. And in the end, he would come to a meeting and he would still say, it's stupid. And I'm like, again. And again, a week lost because you now need to work with him and understand why it is. But in the end, I think it's very useful because I believe that focusing only on the positives is easier to create results in the short term. But when you don't focus on the negatives, you create a problem that will catch you up later on. So I didn't like it when I was going through that. Now I like it as a very good lesson learned from that period.
So after Slevomat, you became an investor in LRJ Capital, which is a VC company established in Czech Republic and also in Slovakia. So what was your motivation behind leaving the well-established company and then starting to invest and also create young startups?
Mm-hmm. So at Slevomat, I had several challenges that I wanted to tick off. One of them was that Groupon was the fastest growing company in the world. So what we wanted to do is create the fastest growing company in Czech Republic. And so we said how it was measured by Forbes for the world was that the company that achieved $1 billion in revenues the fastest. And so in Czech it was easy because like $1 billion in Czech crowns is much lower number. So we ended up taking the challenge, and I think it took us 3.7 years or something to achieve that. And so that was just like shortly before I left. And also as a group, we did something like 110 million euro in revenues in the 6 countries where Slevomat was active at that time. And so for me, one big part was that I was missing a challenge because I ticked off all the things that I wanted. Another part was that I still had some like differing views than the shareholders on what the company should do and where it should go, and it it wasn't very positive for me because every time I came to the board meetings, it took me like 2-3 days to recover my energy levels. So that was another point. And so after we had some discussions and arguments, I ended up, and one other thing was that I actually, I was discussing with them always that I wanted to build up the company and find someone who would be able to take the CEO role and be better at it. And I actually had a girl. She was like about this tall, and she was like less than 50 kilos, but she was like super smart, and her results in any area where we put her in the company were really impressive. And she was like a person who was much more detail oriented than I was. And in that time, someone was a company where all the like huge opportunities were already taken like benefit of, and what we needed was really go into the detail and squeeze out more and more from everything, and really make the company much more efficient, not just put together the structure and the team, but really go into the detail and make sure that every single piece of or pocket of value is really digged out fully. And she was much better at that. So in the end, these three factors, when they combine, I actually ended up leaving the company. She took it over, and she has impressive results because the company, the year after I left, grew over 20%, and the next year was almost 20%, which is for such a big company is really impressive.
Great. So then you moved on to become an investor in LRJ. I guess there are a few people that are building their companies. Can you tell us about the investment strategy of LRJ? What are the startups or verticals that are usually of interest for you? And on the other hand, what is that you're looking for when you're assessing the business plans?
Mm-hmm. So after Slevomat, I took more than half a year off, not doing anything, which was really great. And then we ended up establishing LRJ, where the idea was to create a fund that would create the best possible conditions for entrepreneurs with really global ambitions to succeed. So what we wanted is, we wanted a fund that would not have any of the conditions that are preventing the founders from succeeding. Like one of the strongest like this is the closed-end period. So basically most funds are established that they have a 5-year investment window, 5-year exit window, then you have to be fully exited. And so because of that, most of the funds have like a drag-along right, so they can sell you at any time, and they have a really like strong say in the management and things like that. And we thought, let's try and let's create a fund where we would say, okay, we trust the founders, and let's create a structure so that we are supporting them but not preventing them from doing anything. And this strategy is evolving because we also got burned at some occasions. But in general, what we look for is we look for founders who really have global ambitions and have already a track record of early success, and what they need is help with the scaling. And so I spent a lot of time in US creating networks with VCs there, so that when we end up having someone who grows into that size, we are able to help them open up the doors in the top VCs. But not just that, the most critical point is to enable them to pitch the ideas to those investors and get the feedback, not just the polite maybe or something, but get the real feedback and understand what it is. And so with that, we believe we can help them a lot in terms of the sizing. And then the second part which we ended up building is we ended up building a team that can do a lot of the things for you. So many founders get stuck doing legal, finance, A lot of companies are crap at marketing and copywriting, like Slovak companies. A lot of times when you look at their websites, you like, and so things like that. So we ended up establishing a team that can help the companies that are in our portfolio and are operational. So we have a partner who is responsible for legal, who is great at, he was one of the top guys on intellectual property law. We have Michal Pastier in our team, who is probably, at least for me, the best marketer in terms of creativity in our region. We have a guy who still is partially a communication expert in McKinsey. We have a girl who used to do due diligence for buyers of such companies. So she's able to prepare the finances in such a way that when an investor comes, it's professional and there's no black holes in the company. So those are the things that we try to do for such companies. But in general, we see few opportunities because we see a lot of founders who have big vision but do not have the traction yet. Or we see founders who have very good traction but lack the aspiration to turn it into something global. And that's why I actually ended up where I am now, which is Exponea, to try to build something which would be like a case example of how you can actually build a company from Slovakia and get it abroad.
Yeah, so you've already mentioned this. So besides being a director, managing director at LRJ Capital, you also took on the role of CEO in Exponea. So do you remember the time you've met the founder or founders of 7 Segments? I think that was the name of the company at that time. Do you remember the first time you've met? What was it like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're now joking that it's 2 names away for the company. So I ended up meeting him through Philip Fisher. I met Philip during one of the Leave summer camps where I was a facilitator and Philip was the coordinator of the project for some students. And then Philip told me that we met a lot of times after that, and Philip told me that I'm always so impressed and I'm always talking so much about how analytics helped Slevomat to be where it is. And he said, look, there's a guy who is working for us and he prepared something which seems very similar to what you're talking about. Why don't you meet him? I think he's onto something interesting and he might need a good business mentor. So we ended up meeting when I was still CEO of Slevomat, and when I met him, I first was initially quite skeptical, but then when he showed me the product and when he told me the vision, I was really impressed, and I told him that I'm like, why didn't he come 2 years earlier? Because he would have saved me 1.5 years of work on the analytics front. Because it was exactly those things that we were doing, and the tool enabled in like 10x, 20x faster delivery times. And so we met 2 or 3 times before I went for my half-year vacation, and I remember that when I was about to leave, I was really, really thinking about that this could be a great company, and I actually even told my wife that I should discuss with him some kind of engagement. I should give him some angel investment or something, and I ended up not doing that before the vacation because everyone told me not to do it because otherwise I wouldn't have the vacation. I would be still thinking about it. So I went away for like 2 months of not being contactable. I actually ended up turning my phone off for the whole week, and I only turned it on for like an hour on Sunday, always to just tell my parents that I'm still alive. And then when I came back, I met with him again, and I saw that what progress they did in those few months. And then, luckily, because I didn't know at the time, we ended up coming with the idea of LRJ Capital, and so this was our first investment that we actually closed.
Great. So you've become CEO at Exponea. What were the qualities that you brought and the processes that you implemented upon your arrival to Exponea?
So I ended up becoming CEO about a year after the investment. when the founder came to me and told me that he believes that I would add a lot of value in the company, and he also said that he would really want us to focus on the e-commerce part of the market. And the decision was long because I knew that the work overload would be huge again, and I was quite happy that I suddenly even had some time and for my daughter, which was not my wife or myself, which wasn't the case at Groupon and at McKinsey. But I ended up going for it exactly because I thought that if I'm telling people that it's possible, then the best way how to prove it is to roll up my sleeves and try to do it. And so I'm glad that I did it because it's easy to forget how difficult it is. I remember that I was giving the talks about how Slevomat was an easy success and everything, and I actually ended up believing myself, and now I realize that it's far from that, and the role of an entrepreneur is really tough. Like there's so many things that are not working, and you're trying to cover each of the holes that is necessary, and then there's a lot of holes that are not necessary to be covered, and then you just need to think, you never know which one will become necessary, and then you also need to build up front and build up the spikes that you have in the company. So that's quite tough. In terms of what I brought into the company, the first thing I did it in Slevomat, and I also did it in here, was HR. So I brought a great girl for HR who started to look into the company and identify what the issues were of the people inside, so that we help them fix it. Again, similar to Groupon. So after we fixed some of the hot issues, we started to work on getting people in, which wasn't easy because when you go through tough times in a company, you end up and initially you don't have a pipeline of people, so you end up basically initially you hire every single person that looks like he might be good and who passes around, right? And so a lot of people came through the company and were not spreading good word around it. So it wasn't easy, but that was the first main part that I was focusing on. And the second part was sales, because Jožo is an incredible product visionary, but very few people understand him. He's really smart, and some people that are intelligent can only talk with really intelligent people, and product managers often, or like marketers often, are much more like the feelers who have the empathy, like the stronger empathy than they would be hardcore technical guys. So my task was to translate the vision into a way that it would be compelling for the product owners or product managers or marketers, which is still an ongoing task because that's quite difficult.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit more about the Exponea. So what is the current market position of the company? How has the company been growing for the past few months, and let's say how many customers do you currently have?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of where Exponea is advanced analytics and marketing automation platform. Where we are now, we now have over 40 customers on, hopefully by the end of the week, 5 continents. Where there's still one small thing that we are discussing in a contract, and potentially we might have 6 continents soon as well, because we're discussing with one African company as well. In terms of size, we did somewhere around 200,000 euro in revenue in the last quarter. Still a long way to go to where we want to be, but the good part is that the growth rate is really high, and since I came in, we've been doubling quarter on quarter every quarter since then. So I'm joking that if we sustain the growth, 5 quarters from now we're a 100 million euro company, because that's times 32, right? So that, but it's not unreal. So you need to just think about double every quarter means 23%, 24% growth a month. And growing by 24% a month isn't that difficult when you have a SaaS business. So you just need to focus on that and then say, okay, find a way how to do it. But it's difficult because we're pushing things on multiple fronts, and sustaining such growth is very difficult because you need to have great consultants. Then every client comes up with more requests on the product, so the product gets more complex. When you're developing the things into the product, some parts are really great and everyone is super happy about it, but some parts still have some holes. And so when you're adding up the customers, when you're adding up all the data that comes in, and you're also including more and more people into the company, there's so many challenges. So I'm always saying that just getting the company where I would want it to be now would take me at least a year. So I'm far from happy where we are, but I also realize that it's not very easy, and I saw a lot of companies growing, and I know that the mess that you have inside is natural. But I also saw companies that are growing even faster, and when you come in, it looks completely orderly and things are going well. So I know that I can do much better, and because I'm going to US a lot, I see companies that are growing much faster in much larger volumes. So the benchmark is really high for us.
So quite recently you've announced a partnership with Radius, which is a Silicon Valley based company. I've learned that there's possibility for Slovak developers to take on some experience. They can travel to US and work for the company. So what we can expect from this collaboration in upcoming months, and where's that heading?
So Radius is an upcoming unicorn, and it's a company established by the first external engineer at Facebook, and the backers, like the investors in the company, are like super impressive. There's Peter Thiel, Mark Benioff, Jerry Young, Joe Lonsdale. So like really super impressive guys. And the reason why the company is becoming so successful is that what they do is they are building the best B2B interaction map. So every new company comes in and gives them the data about their customers. So you come in and tell them like, look, these are my customers and this is what I'm doing with them, and this is like some indication about the business. And through that, they currently have information about interaction among more than 18 million businesses, and they have over 50 billion signals about how these businesses are interacting. And so through that, what they can do is you come in and you tell them like, look, these are my customers, and they tell you these should be your customers. And with that, you basically every new company that joins the network makes the company much more valuable, right? And so they have an amazingly strong network effect in the company, and it's already now it's very difficult to think about how someone could catch up on them, because they already have so much data and the data is so useful that it's difficult to catch up. Their biggest challenge is that they have so much data and a lot of noisy signals, and they need to find a way for the machine learning algorithms to extract the meanings of all these things. And because of that, they have really hardcore engineering team, and they like many of the people there are like legends in Silicon Valley. And to be able to learn from such people is, I believe, something that is really impressive. And I know now a lot of people who are now working at Google or Facebook, but some of them are doing like really meaningless tasks, right? And I'm not going to name because the people would know, but there are things that are really not value adding, and it's like, they are way too overqualified for such tasks. But this is a role which is really a huge challenge. So we believe that for those people that would come in, they would come back and they would be they would be super skilled and they could become CTO of any kind of organization in the region. And I believe we have a lot of high quality engineers, but we have few that have the experience of building up a large scale team. So we have great programmers that can do something themselves. They can even build like a smaller team, but being part of like a huge team that is working with the best technologies is something that I believe is lacking in here. So that's why we believe it's such a great experience. And how it came up was that I had a chat with Joe Lonsdale about what are the challenges of the companies there, and one of the biggest challenges for them is, of course, engineering talent, right? There are people there that are earning $500,000 a year doing programming jobs, because the value for such companies is much, much higher, right? And so we said we should try it, and I ended up talking with Andrej Kiska Jr., who has a non-profit called Starlift that does basically this, sending top engineers to abroad, but they said they are still struggling to get the high quality talent in, but they are focusing much more on the more junior people. So we said we should try it, and we gave it a shot, and we said, okay, let's give it a few weeks of really hard effort, and let's see whether we can pull out the engineers that are already peaking in terms of what they can learn here, and try to send them there and really boost their skills, because when they come back, it will be incredibly useful. And we believe that given that there's a lot of technologies that Radius is using, that we are using as well, so I believe that we have also a high chance that we will be attracting a lot of these people coming back.
All right, now let's move back to you as a person and your experiences in the past. So if you were to name a few of your fuck-ups that happened to you in your past, what would be them, and what were the key learnings from them?
There's so many, so it's difficult to prioritize. I try always my thinking is always very simple. I do not have a good memory. So what I need to do is always to learn the so what, the out of the experience, and then just know this is like a new rule that I have, and then I don't really remember the fuck-ups. But I have quite a lot. So let's say my relationship with the ex-CEO of Slevomat is a big fuck-up, and it was more about my immaturity, about thinking about him than him, because if I was interacting with him today, I would be able to manage those interactions in a way that it would be beneficial for both of us. But in that time, it wasn't as well managed from my side. So I cannot even say that we have any relationship now. Another thing is we did one investment that we did because the person had very good reputation, and we ended up doing the conditions like way too soft, I would say, and now the situation is like very tough, and not because I would think that the person wanted to do something bad, but because we never went into the details of how we imagine it. Both parties ended up being quite far away from each other, and it just kept going further and further away, and so that's another one. Another fuck up I would say is it's not good when you start earning a lot of money to upgrade your living standards and spend a lot of money on that, because that's just like stupid. So when I got my BMW when I was at Slevomat, and when then I was giving it back, it was a painful experience. And so, and if I wish now I managed to cut my expenses back quite a lot, except for housing, but it's because of my wife. Trying to keep her happy in Bratislava is not easy. So that's there. But going up
Czech?
with,
Is she Czech?
yeah, she's from Mělník, which is a 30 kilometers away from Prague. And so, that's, keeping up, going up with your expenses doesn't make you any happier, but going down is more difficult, but it's also like a very cleaning experience. Then a lot of, in terms of hiring, I learned a lot, and hiring and firing is like, you make a lot of mistakes in there as well. In terms of firing, I learned the lesson that I never had an experience where I would regret firing someone. And there were a lot of people who passed through both Slevomat, Groupon, and even now Exponea. And so I learned that you should never postpone firing decision. So once you get into a stage where you know that it's not working out with the person, it's not good to postpone it any further. And some people consider it like ruthless and lacking any kind of empathy. But I'm always saying that a line that comes from Jack Welch is that by firing someone, you actually do a good deed towards him, because if he's not performing in the job where he is, he's also struggling internally, and when you leave him there for too long, he starts thinking that he's like a mistake, he's a fuck up, screw up, whatever. And usually every person is great for something, but you just need to enable him to find what it is. And if he's not good at what he does, then you should help him change it or help him to try elsewhere, right? And in terms of hiring, so one thing that I learned, but that I learned it already a long time ago, is that brand names don't mean anything, but I still sometimes fall for that. So when someone came through Harvard or came through McKinsey or Procter & Gamble or whatever, it doesn't mean that he would be good at the job. So some time ago I was able to go through interviews by assuming the person knows and staying at very high level. And because of that, then when the person came, I found out that the high level he knew, but below he didn't, because he had so many people doing that, right? And when I needed him to also deliver that job, he started recruiting and he started building up a big team, and rather than really being able to take one or two people and make it happen, right? So those are some of the top things that are coming to my mind. Another thing that is a mistake that I do like repeatedly, which is taking on too much. So again, when I just noted down the number of activities I'm involved in. I did it 2 days ago, and I ended up at the number 16. So I actually cut off and I made it 6, which is something that I believe is sustainable.
Can you name a few of them?
Like, you have Exponea, you have LRJ, you have Duke of Edinburgh as a non-profit, you have YPO, a young person organization, you have Mingle Games, which is a gaming company, you have Charge Monkey, you have Aeromobile, you have now this Starlift initiative, so
it's a lot,
yeah. So many companies that are in the portfolio where I have some kind of commitment, and there are also 2 companies where we're now doing a review on them.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you're doing a review of a company, that also takes a lot of time, but it's always just a short wave. So I now cut off a lot of the things that I was doing, and we now also do not give any kind of, when there's any kind of company coming to LRJ, we do not give them any kind of guarantee that I would be available to them on a monthly basis or anything like that. What we do more is that we give them a promise that we select a few areas which we consider strategically important, and we tell them for these areas we are able to get you some experts to those meetings. So we end up selecting a few areas, and then we end up doing the first workshop usually with me and one other person, and then the second workshop we try to pull someone from our networks that we believe is great for that thing and bring him in. rather than me meeting with those companies regularly.
Right, so actually I observed my last question is already asked by someone from the audience, so let's jump straight to Slido. If you had a lot of money, no, sorry, mine was, what advice would you now give to a 20-year-old Peter Irikovsky?
Yeah. So one of the rules that I gave to myself, which helped me a lot in my career, was that whenever I consider what I'm doing not fun and when I'm struggling, I stop and change it, whatever the costs are. And so I did a few like hard stops in my career, but I only learned that, or I only came up with that rule when I was something like second year at McKinsey. And why it helps me a lot is that it's usually much easier to change what is bugging you or what is like really draining your energy than you would think. But most of my time before, I had a goal, and I was like, okay, achieving that goal would only take me a year to whatever, so I just need to, sustain that. And what I learned is you don't need to suffer on the way almost at all. You can always just find ways how you can change the circumstances around you, and that helps a lot. And that would save me quite a lot of gray hair if I had that, because then most of the time you're enjoying what you're doing, which is really great. And so that would be probably the thing. It took me probably something like 5 years after I was 20, so it would help me quite a lot in that time.
Right, another question. So if you had a lot of money, no need to earn, what would you do?
So when I was leaving Slevomat, I did some calculation, and if I went to somewhere to Indonesia where you can very easily live out of something like, or Philippines where you can easily live out of 20, 30 euros a day also with your family, so then when you earn any kind of interest, like reasonable interest on your money, then you don't need much to be able not to do anything, right? So it was also one of my ideas at that time. But in the end, once you take half a year vacation, you don't need much more, right? So you end up really doing anything from your bucket list, and then you just basically are enjoying your time and are meeting people and stuff. And that's not much fun too long. So probably I would do the same what I'm doing. I'm giving myself similar question quite a lot, and whenever the answer is different to what I'm doing, then I try to change what I'm doing, because money is not important, So once you make anything about whatever, like 4,000 euros net a month, there's nothing you miss, right? You can go to vacation anywhere, you can buy any car you want, right? You don't need anything, and that's not much money, right? And so once you have that, you're set. So then you shouldn't think about more money, but you should be thinking about what makes sense for you. And what makes sense for me is, I had a lot of discussions about it with Brian Kleskin from Leaf, and what I believe I'm good at is business and people, and like developing people. And so I was just thinking about where can this skill be most useful. And one of the initiatives that Leaf always wanted to pursue is how to nurture the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we spent loads of discussions that we spent many days until like 3 a.m. discussing those things, and we ended up saying like the best thing that we can do is really help create such companies that would be the case examples. So my internal goal for Exponea are 2 goals. So first goal is to build it into like a really successful global company, ideally $1 billion company. But I don't consider that any kind of like fancy or good or anything. But the second part is the more important for me, which is I would like to create something like a PayPal mafia. PayPal mafia, what it means is the guys from PayPal after they exited PayPal, they ended up establishing more than $10 billion companies. And so the exit was something like 2005. And from those companies that were established after PayPal and became billion-dollar companies, there are already more than 10 billion-dollar companies that were established by the guys from those companies. So my main, where I would really feel fulfilled is if, let's say, something between 7 and 10 years from now, there would be at least 3 companies that are established by people who went through Exponea and learned something and are on track to become like really important global players. So that's what gives me some kind of purpose, because I really like doing things that have long impact. So I work hard for a short period of time, but the impact is long. And so if this works, then I believe the impact is really big and it's also long. And so that would make me happy.
Another question, how do you manage your work-life balance? Are you happy with it?
The simple answer is no. So again, this similar thing. So whenever I'm very unhappy with it for more than 2 weeks, I change something. So I try. So there are weeks when I work. I have some weeks, but not many, where I even work like 100 hours a week. But then I change it, and then I spend maybe, let's say 35, 40, and then spend some time with my family. So now I'm in a point where I thought that summer would be easier, and it hasn't. So I'm now in a point where I actually even need some energy for myself. So I'm planning to switch off my phone and go into the woods for 3 days and just take water with me. So no food, and just like sit somewhere where there's no one, and just take a piece of paper and just write down my thoughts on a piece of paper. And I believe that will help me again calm down, and I now see that I need it. And I know now is another good time to do that, but I don't care, because I know that in long term it's much more useful than overcoming the struggle. So I'll probably do it in the next 10 days. So that's one of the ways how I tackle this. But in general, you need to have fun at work, and then you don't need to take care of much of yourself, and then you just need to find time for your family. So how I try to do that, and I'm not great at it, but many weeks it's okay, many it's not, is that I try to schedule time with my family first. So for example, we have a date and we are able to make it like 3 times a month with my wife every Monday 7:15. And most of the times I'm not finished with work, and sometimes actually after the date I come back to work and work, but we at least have some like 2 hours together where Stella is with our babysitter, and so we have time for ourselves. Then I also have in my calendar every Wednesday morning I'm taking care of Stella before the babysitter comes, because Lucy goes to work at 7 in the morning. She only works 2 days a week, but that day she works from 7 a.m. in the morning. So I know that I'm with Stella for 2 hours in the morning, and then I try to schedule at least one other evening into my calendar, so where I spend time with Stella. And then I try really hard to not work over the weekend, or if work, then only limit it like to a few hours, and then I just spread it either in the evening or sometimes when Lucy goes for a walk with Stella or something.
Do you think one should consider a career in a corporation while enjoying running his or her own profitable business? Is there a natural way in that direction?
So this is quite common thing in Czech Republic. In Czech Republic there's over 20,000 e-commerce businesses, and most of them are run by people who have it as their side job, and they do it after work. In general, for me, if you have a aspiration to build like a global company, it's very difficult to do it this way. And I don't know if I know any case example of someone doing it as a side job and then turning it into like a big company. But maybe there are. But in general, I don't see it. But as a side job, I know a lot of people who manage to create like a small side job that earns them 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 euros on the side, and for an easy life, it's not that tough. And there are people who actually ended up creating very interesting businesses. There's a guy from a corporate that started creating like a special. I cannot be too specific, but he started creating special equipment for motorcycles as a side job, and he now some people ended up using his equipment at the Dakar rally, and had really good results. So he ended up getting so many orders that it paid him more than his really well-paid corporate job, and so he ended up leaving that corporate job and now focusing on this only full time. So it might be an interesting experience, but the question is what you want. If it's about money, then probably there are easy ways, because a lot of like big corporates are very inefficient. So there are guys who can add a lot of value and get paid, let's say 5,000 euros a month for spending 20, 30 hours a month doing any kind of work for that corporate. So in that case, it's nice. But in terms of building a huge business, I believe in Slovakia it's very, very easy to get seed funding. So if you have a good idea and you're convinced about it, then you should go and try to get some seed funding. Or there's a lot of angels, also like Neology Ventures has this 200k ticket that they get already to a lot of companies. So I believe that's a bigger adventure.
So we have time for one more question. If you had a chance to work for any company in any business field, which sphere would you choose and why?
That's simple. I would do what I do. So I wouldn't change it. And but I just wanted, when you said this is the last question, then I need to answer my own question. So one of the things that came to my mind when answering the last question is that what I see now, and it's hard for me to see and painful, is that a lot of people are actually starting their companies just for the hype of it. And a lot of the people do not have any kind of experience and are always looking at Zuckerberg as how young he was and when he established Facebook. And they do not realize that the average age of founders of billion-dollar companies is 34 years. And so in general, if someone wants to go and do anything entrepreneurial, I believe that he needs to do 2 or 3 things. So one thing is, if you know that there's something that you want to disrupt, so for example banking or telco, then you should go and work in banking and telco to learn how screwed it is inside, and so that you understand why things are that way, right? Because most people would come and think, oh, it's very inefficient, but they do not know why, and so changing it is very difficult. Second thing is, I believe that they should go through companies in multiple stages. For me, I now, for example, I know myself that I'm not a seed founder. So I shouldn't be the one who starts establishing the company, because as I said, I'm more of a guy who knows who will do the job best, not doing it myself. So and going through various stages will help you understand where you are actually good, and then knowing when you should join a company, right? So and I know a lot of people who made huge money. So like my ex-boss from Groupon is now in a company which is already over $1 billion valuation, called Auto1 Group. He joined them when the company was valued around 70 million, right? He got quite decent share, and now his shares are worth well over 100 million, right? And he's not a founder, right? And he did a really great job for them, because he came into a company which was already doing a lot of things, and he managed to build the systems so that he managed to scale it up so significantly that now the valuation is well over $1 billion, right? And so many people try to go somewhere, but they fit only in certain stages. And so I encourage everyone to go through the experience first with someone on the side and learn from their experience rather than learn from your mistakes. There's infinite number of mistakes, but there's only very finite number of ways how to make a company work. And so, getting out there and going into a company that is growing fast and proving yourself there is the best way. It helped me tremendously. I was 27 when I was in Groupon, and I went from having 0 people below me to 25 in 5 or 6 weeks, right? And you learn so much. And I did a lot of mistakes, a lot of costly mistakes, right? But it wasn't my money, right? So, and when it's not your money, you are much more risk-taking, and you can try various things, right? So it's much easier, you learn much faster, and you end up, getting to various positions that are much better for you.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Please give a warm applause for Peter. Thanks again to our partners and sponsors, KPMG, The Spot, and you guys enjoy the rest of the night. There are some refreshments at the bar, so feel free to grab them and get to know each other. Thanks.
Thank you.